opposition that prevents it. And after the whole business of 9/11, the American people's opposition to government tyranny dramatically reduced because they became terrified of the Muslims under the bed and all the rest of the baloney. So when that happened, the government just expands like an evil balloon to take over everything. And the bigger the government gets, the more torturers and people who just love feeling you up at the airport. I mean, this is the government. And so we're in a fight for our lives, of course. On the other hand, I think, and Ron Paul shows this with the millions of kids that he's brought into our movement, more and more opposition is springing up to this. So there's the normal battle, which goes on through all of history between what Murray Rothbard called power and market, between the private society and the violence promoters. We have the people who use violence. Some of them we call criminals, the muggers, murderers, rapists, and burglars, and so forth. Others we call the government, although they have exactly the same moral compass as the murderers, the rapists, and the burglars. And so this is the great fight. So this is the fight we're engaged in. We have to, first of all, learn from people like you, Alex. We have to read the great books of Mises and Rothbard and all the great Austrian economists, the great libertarians, and understand why the government is our enemy, what we can do about it. But the first thing is we have to change ourselves to become opponents of all of this, intellectual opponents, withdraw our consent, don't laugh at the government, explain to others about government lies, and of course every word that comes out of their mouths is a lie. So these people are our enemy, not some alleged terrorists in Yemen. People in Washington are our enemies. They want every bit of control over our lives. We see 1984, Orwell's novel, coming true right before our eyes. All the stuff that I fought all my life, you too, Alex, we see it happening at just an unbelievable pace right now. But still, they need the people's consent.
Yes, but why is it going into overdrive? I mean, I know historically corruption gets to a point and always does this, and generally that's when you get liberty back if you're not totally destroyed. But, I mean, this is cartoon level, the ridiculous lying, and city after city, it turns out they hire the head TSA person is convicted pedophiles or deep-frocked priest, and just the crimes and the trillions every year stolen at the Pentagon and CIA aircraft, and they have the troops line up and admit they're growing the opium to desensitize people, because they had to kill Pat Tillman because he spoke out. I mean, it's so ridiculous, and I wonder what's coming next. I mean, they've gone crazy.
Well, one thing we can be sure of, there is nothing beyond them. If they decide not to do some horrendous thing to us, it's only because they haven't thought of it, or they can't get it organized because they're the government, or they think it's not in their interest. But this bunch would never say, oh, we can't do that because it would be wrong. That is never a consideration. So we can expect the worst from them. It's why we have to be the best, why we have to arm ourselves, why we have to, as I said, laugh at them, deny them, undermine them, subvert them in every way we can.
It's funny you say that, because every time we put up a TSA video making fun of them, YouTube bans it, but they'll let us put up anything else against them. But literally, they do not like being made fun of.
No, and this is an ancient point, that the prince can take almost anything except being laughed at. When they laugh at the government, that's why they ban jokes at the airport. You can actually go to jail for telling a joke in the land of the First Amendment. So but again, you have to first educate yourself. As Albert J. Knox said, about the one thing you can do for the human race is present it with one improved unit. You have to make yourself better. You make yourself better by learning more, not what you get in the government schools or from the government media or the government press releases. All the columnists and so forth are doing nothing but promoting the government line. You have to be radically different. You have to understand what Murray Rothbard said, that the state is a gang of thieves writ large. If you understand that, if you understand the nature of government, you understand that it not only doesn't have your best interests at heart, it's your enemy. It's the enemy of your children. It's the enemy of your future. It's the enemy of all your descendants. It's the enemy of everything you believe in. It's the enemy of your religion. It's the enemy of your community, your home, your business. It is the enemy. So not these guys overseas, not the alleged terrorists, the people who were terrorizing you.
Well, I was about to say,
taking all your money. It's the government.
Sure. I mean, let's just say Al-Qaeda really did 9/11. All Easter bunnies are, real. All of this. Okay, let's say it's real. You got a better chance of a honeybee killing you. They've done national news stories on that than these people. But then it's in the LA Times and it's in the Associated Press in the back of the paper that Al-Qaeda in Al-Qaeda uniforms with Al-Qaeda patches and flags took over Libya, murdered people en masse. Obama said bombing is a peace operation, not war. You know, the Peace Prize winner.
Yeah.
Again, it's like dark satire. It's like a Kurt Vonnegut novel. And now they're using Al-Qaeda to go in and bomb Syria, blow up police stations. Hillary lies and says Russia's sending them helicopters. Turns out that's a lie. I mean, it's crazy that the government is using Al-Qaeda as their jihadi brigade, as they did against the Russians back in the 80s. And then I'm told, give my rights up, let them grope my wife and children at the airport for people that work for them publicly.
Well, sure, and of course, and as you mentioned, the whole Syria thing is a trick. I mean, it's the CIA and the Mossad funding these various so-called rebels who are trying to, overthrow the last non-Islamic fundamentalist government in the Arab world, the last secular Arab government. They did it in Iraq, and Al-Qaeda's coming in. The U.S., like any empire, as the Romans used to say, divide and rule, divide and conquer. So they want to happen in Libya. The U.S. supported Al-Qaeda in the war against the Russians in Afghanistan, supported Osama bin Laden. And so they're using them again in Syria. There's a similar group they're funding in Iran to cause various terrorist incidents.
And I know you know this, but people can even see it in the Washington Post from like 15 years ago. It's so amazing that on top of all this, the billions were spent over the decades paying for the textbooks saying kill Americans, jihad this. Our government funded the radical madrasas because they don't want the Arabs who invented mathematics and science to become industrialized to compete. They want a bunch of crazy guys, the bad guys in Team America running around. I mean, imagine the magnitude of that.
Well, and they want to do the Arabs what they want to do the rest of us, this. And so they want the Arabs backward. They want them ill-educated. They want them economically backward. And in order to control them, control the oil and to break up all the countries in the Middle East. This is the open neocon plan and that was issued before Bush's first Iraq war. They want to break up all these Muslim countries. The better to control them and to control all the oil. This is what the U.S. would like to do everywhere. The Romans pulled the same thing. This is nothing new. I'm sure the Assyrians or the Babylonians and the Egyptians and all the other empires did it. And America, of course, is not a republic. It's an empire. We're not a free country anymore. We're a semi-free country. We're not the richest country in the world. They can all raise the foam finger number one all they want. We're not exceptional. We're regular people. This is not the greatest country ever to exist in the history of the human race and all the rest of that nonsense. Switzerland, I mean, there are a lot of other great countries in the world. There have been many great countries. Every civilization has got good things about it. Every civilization has got bad things about it. But the notion that all this, constant...
all this tyranny is what America...
We're the greatest, and we can kill everybody because we're the best, and God has blessed us, and, all that sort of stuff. Has been an unfortunate thread throughout of American history. Kill all the Indians because they were savages and so forth. So there's bad stuff in every country, including in America. We're not the best people in the world. It's just pride, right? It's a sin of pride. It's very dangerous. And the typical American feels we can kill everybody all over the world, and then they're astonished that maybe people don't like that. Don't like having their families, their children butchered. And this is why we're hated. We as a country, I shouldn't say we, the U.S. government is hated all over the world. Hated. No American realizes this. We're hated. And this is why when the dollar goes down, we're going to see some interesting developments in terms of other countries. Everybody hates being under the U.S. yoke. They don't like it. And every decent American should hate being under the yoke of D.C. himself or herself as well.
And D.C. itself has been captured by the mega bankers. I'm going to put you on the spot because we got you on a little bit late today. We got a 1-minute break. I want to come back with 5 final minutes on what you think is happening in Europe, where you think that's going to go, how we don't let them use the crisis that's coming, as Ron Paul said a decade ago, as you said over a decade ago, from becoming total government and, instead of using it to reduce all this tyranny. But we're going to break in a minute. What else is important on your radar screen, Lew Rockwell of Rockwell.com?
Well, it's, of course, all the stuff, Alex, that you talk about. I mean, the police state, the drones, I was glad to see Rand Paul introduce a bill that if they're going to send a drone to spy on you, they got to have a search warrant. Of course, there are no search warrants. There are, we live in an authoritarian society. We're moving towards totalitarianism, but nevertheless, we can object to it. It's actually possible to stop it. We don't have to become slaves. Although that's, of course, the way things are headed.
Stay there. Back in 1 minute with 5 more minutes of Lew Rockwell, then Gary Johnson.
You are listening.
All right, we got Lew Rockwell of LewRockwell.com with us for 5 more minutes. And he was bringing up what's happening in Europe. I mean, I was reading, they're saying you can come into Euro, but you can't leave. We're going to search you. We're going to take your money. ATM withdrawals will be restricted. And I heard this from sources, well, Bob Chapman's State Department sources, a year and a half ago. The TSA is acting like this now on the highways. They admit that's going to be their mission. I mean, at a certain point, I avoid the airports now with my family, but I mean, if they try to pull me over and grope my family as a symbol of my submission to them, my prisoner training, I don't know what I'm going to do at this point, Lew. What's your take on what's happening in Europe and anything else on your radar?
Pick up on your last point. We've already had a number of cases where people's cash has been confiscated from them. The cops stop them, and this is their own cash. They've earned it honestly. But yeah, the government doesn't want you to have it. I would say, always do the opposite of what the government wants you to do. And whether you're a European or an American, I hope to goodness everybody has got some significant amount of cash outside of the banks. Of course, you ought to have gold and silver as well as the key part of your investments. But you ought to have some cash. It's always fun to take cash out of the bank. They hate it. It's a fun thing to go and take it. They don't want you to do it, and it's because they pyramid on it. They inflate on top of it. So you're helping all of society as well as yourself when you take some money out of the bank. And I hope people in Europe are doing this. And of course, we've seen this in Argentina and other places where ATM withdrawals have indeed been restricted. And so take that as a signal. What's happening in Europe? Well, everybody's being crucified for the sake of the banks. They talk about bailing out Greece. They're not bailing out Greece. Spain is not being bailed out. I was glad at least Spain did things a little more honestly this time. The money went directly to the banks. It didn't even go through the government. So all this is about bailing out the banks, not Greece being bailed out or whatever, and the higher taxes and so forth being forced on these countries. It's to pay off the banks, all the banks that hold the government debt. And there's no way to do it, by the way. There is going to have to be a default. There's not enough productivity in the whole world to undo what these rotten banks have done, these fractional reserve banksters who are in league with the government. Same in our own country. They're very, very powerful. Europe and the United States are sort of bankocracies. We saw it when Jamie Dimon was testifying before the Senate committee the other day, and they're all bowing and scraping before him. The senators were salaaming Jamie Dimon because, of course, it is the big banks that are in control. But one thing, first of all, you need to educate yourself about banking. Murray Rothbard's great book, The Mystery of Banking, I can't recommend. And you don't need to be an economist. It's so well written, so easy to read, and so informative. You'll understand for the first time in your life what banking is about and what's wrong with the current state of banking. And but again, take your money out of the bank. Deal as much as you can in cash. They hate it.